Alright, man, we got some people that need to go down range and fix some shit, so I just need you to unload show clear real quick. Check. I think you may have missed a step or two there. No, it's clear. See, the round's on the ground over there. You know what? How about just do a press check for me real quick, just to be sure. Alright, fine. That was weird, but it's clear now. Press check again. Bruh, it's clear. I don't understand why you want me to... What the fuck? You just keep coming out! If you've ever wanted to throat punch someone because they lacked all muzzle awareness, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Guys, despite my best efforts and being one of their best customers, Bad Dragon still refuses to acknowledge my existence, but that's okay, because all the weapons and ammunition in this video were provided graciously by Harmacist Home Security Solutions. Remember Harmacist Home Security Solutions for all your private and unconventional security needs. Harmacist Home Security Solutions, because physical wounds heal. Brothers, others, sisters, am I often forgotten, but most certainly not by me. Belgian wall guns. Today we're going to be talking about the basics of firearm safety. But before we get into it, full disclosure. What's my relationship with firearm safety? Well, I've been a firearms instructor and range safety officer for going on 6 years now. Spent the majority of my adult life on the flat range. So firearm safety has always been a number one priority for me. But without further ado, let's get into it. Now, some of this might be review and a little bit redundant for some of y'all that have been around firearms for a very long time. I still recommend that you continue to watch the video though, because watch time. The main people that this video is geared towards are the people who really want to become part of the 2A community and really want to get into the firearms community, but are maybe a little bit hemmed up on the safety aspect of it. Maybe they've never had a friend or a family member that was interested in firearms or that knew anything about firearms to teach them about the safety aspect, and that's kind of what's hemming them up about getting involved in the community. So if you're one of those people, definitely stick around. I'm certain that you'll learn a thing or two, and hopefully this video will kind of help give you the confidence to get out into the 2A community, get out to the shooting range, try out a few different guns, and hopefully make your first firearm purchase if you haven't done so already. Alright, so we're going to start off with the very basics. For anybody that's spent any time around firearms, it's going to sound pretty familiar to you. Everyone uses different verbiage and diction when it comes to this kind of stuff, but for the most part, pretty much everybody refers to them as the 4 firearm safety rules. So what are the 4 firearm safety rules? Basically what they are is kind of the guiding principles of firearm safety. They're pretty vague, but so long as you follow these 4 rules, you're going to be safe with firearms. Starting things off, the first firearm safety rule is treat all firearms as if they're loaded. There's a second part that I like to tack onto that, but we'll get to that. So let's break down that first part. First part means, as long as we're treating a firearm as if it's loaded, we shouldn't be pointing at anything or anyone that we're not intending to shoot. So treating that firearm as if it's loaded is basically the core of firearm safety. The thing that I like to tack on is until deemed clear and safe for the purposes of dry fire. The reason why I like to tack that on is because technically if I were to want to dry fire a weapon, if I'm treating that weapon as if it's loaded, I'm not going to point it at a random wall in my apartment and press the trigger. Now the second and third firearm safety rules, I like to kind of cover almost together because they kind of bleed into one another. So the second firearm safety rule is always maintain proper muzzle control. For those of you that don't know, this right here, this is your muzzle, also known as the business end, also the end of the barrel. It's where the bullet comes out of. So when we're talking about maintaining proper muzzle control, that means being aware of where your muzzle is pointed at all times and making sure that it stays pointed in a safe direction. And the third firearm safety rule, and you can see me doing it right now, is keep your finger off the trigger, outside the trigger guard, and index along the frame or receiver of the firearm until you are on target and ready to shoot. Basically what that means is you're doing exactly what I'm doing right here. My finger is outside of the trigger guard, index along the frame or receiver of my firearm, and I am not going to put my finger on that trigger until I've identified my target, I have my sight picture on my target, and I have made the decision to shoot. Now, the reason why I say that these play into each other and they bleed into one another is because the way that your body mechanics work. If I keep my finger indexed along the frame or receiver, I know where my muzzle is pointed at all times. Your body naturally knows where you're pointing, or at least the general area in which you're pointing. I know that I have a sign in my corner of the room. I can point at it without looking at it. If I want to point to one of the plushies behind me, I can point at it and get in the same general area as one without having to look. And the same thing applies with a firearm. I know that my muzzle is pointed in the safe direction right now because I am currently pointed at the ground. Another way of saying this rule that you might hear every now and again, you'll probably also hear me refer to it as, is keep your damn booger hook off the fucking bang switch until you're ready to bring the heat. All right, and finally, the fourth firearm safety rule is know your target and what is beyond it. Basically, what this means is properly ID your target, whether it be at the range or in a self-defense scenario. Properly ID your target and understand that your bullet may not stop when it hits your target. Especially if you're at the range, paper and cardboard doesn't stop bullets. In a self-defense scenario, you have to be aware of the fact that your bullet could easily overpenetrate your target and could strike someone or something behind them. Now, bullets are weird and do weird things when they enter people. When it comes down to terminal ballistics, for the most part, your standard hollow point rounds are going to expand pretty uniformly and have a higher likelihood of stopping inside the threat. Something like a full metal jacket round, on the other hand, that is fairly unpredictable. The terminal ballistics of a full metal jacket round, it could be a straight punch through and through if it's unimpeded by bone or connective tissue, but if it strikes bone or some sort of other dense material inside of somebody, it can easily ricochet and pitch and yaw and come out a completely different location. That's the reason why we emphasize having to know both your target and what is beyond it, because every bullet that comes out of your firearm, you are ultimately responsible for. All right, now that we're done talking about the 4 firearm safety rules, we're going to talk about a very fun subject of unintentional discharges. An unintentional discharge, it's exactly what the name sounds like. It's where the firearm goes off when you did not intend for it to go off. Now, I know that that could be a difficult concept for, say, a federal agent who's supposed to be trained and a professional when it comes to weapons handling to, grasp the concept of. But unintentional discharges are broken down into 2 different types of discharges. You have accidental and you have negligent, also known as an ND or a desk pop. Now, an accidental discharge is basically fault of the ammunition or the weapon causing it to go off without the intention of it going off. Pretty simple. Very few unintentional discharges end up being accidental. The vast majority of them end up being negligent. A negligent discharge is the fault of the end user, so the shooter. So this is typically seen if people are going back to the holster. And typically what it is people have their goddamn booger hook on the fucking bang switch when they go try to put their gun in their holster, thus pressing the trigger and popping a round off into their leg. Overall, negligent discharges are incredibly preventable, and the easiest way to prevent a negligent discharge is following those 4 firearm safety rules, always knowing the condition of your weapon, so knowing if it's loaded, knowing if it's unloaded, knowing how to properly function your weapon, so knowing how to properly load your weapon and clear the weapon, and if you don't know, asking questions and getting help. All right, now talking about how to properly unload and clear your firearm and make it safe, that's what we're going to get into next. Now, I'm not going to be able to demonstrate how to unload every single firearm known to man, obviously, but what I can do is kind of take you through the process. Most firearms tend to follow the same general process when it comes to clearing them. So, you see, got my AR right here. Let's load up with dummy rounds, and the first thing you're going to do when you come to clear a firearm like this is identify the safety and make sure that the weapon is set to safe. Once you verify that the weapon's unsafe, you're going to keep that weapon pointed in a safe direction, and while keeping it pointed in a safe direction, you're going to remove the source ammunition, also known as the magazine. With the source ammunition removed, you're going to cycle the action 3 times. Then after you cycle it 3 times, you're going to lock your bolt to the rear, and you're going to visually check your chamber and your magazine well. Now, say you have a rifle like an AK that does not have a bolt lock on it. It's going to be the same general premise. The only thing is that instead of locking your bolt to the rear, you're going to have to physically hold your bolt to the rear while you're checking your chamber and your magazine well. And the same premise applies to most modern handguns. Now, depending on your make and model, you may or may not have a manual safety. For the example I have here, my P320, it does not have a manual safety on it. Just like with the AR-15 and the AK, basically any type of semi-automatic, detachable box, magazine-fed firearm, first thing you're going to do, make sure that it stays pointed in a safe direction. You're going to remove your source ammunition, your magazine, and you're going to rack the slide 3 times. Get that first round out, and then lock your slide to the rear and visually check your chamber and your magazine well, looking to make sure that there's no brass left in the firearm. Now, the last firearm that I'm going to kind of demonstrate how to clear is going to be a pump action tube fed shotgun. Now, this is really going to differ manufacturer to manufacturer. What I have right here is a Mossberg M590A1. The way that you're going to unload this versus the way you're going to unload a Remington 870, they're similar, but they're also different. So I highly recommend consulting your user manual and maybe even looking up a guide. But both follow the same general premise, especially when it comes to tube fed guns. So right now, what I'm going to do is make sure that it's on safe. Then while keeping it pointed in a safe direction, I'm going to first remove the ammunition from the firearm. So I tend to find it easiest to kind of bring it over my shoulder. And then inside of the loading port, there's what's known as shell latches. And those shell latches are what actually keep the shells inside the magazine tube. And you can depress those shell latches to remove the shells. And they can be a little bit finicky at first, but basically use the shell latches and your thumb and forefinger to eject all the rounds inside your shotgun until you get to the plastic follower, showing you that you have no rounds remaining inside your tube mag. Then when you have the tube magazine fully empty, after that you're going to take the round out of the chamber. For that, I tend to find it's easiest to bring my shotgun into my hip. I put my pinky behind the forend here and I slowly bring the action back until I can reach in and pry that round off of my extractor. Bring the action all the way to the rear, and then just like with all of our other firearms, we're going to visually inspect our chamber and make sure that there is no ammunition present inside the weapon. Now, the last subject that I'm going to cover is going to be the 2 primary conditions that you're probably going to be loading your weapon to. Those 2 conditions being the unchambered condition and the chambered condition. Now, unchambered condition has a few different names that it sometimes goes by. The one that I hear most often is cruiser ready. So that's going to be the first one I'm going to show you all how to load to. It's extremely simple. So demonstrating with an AR-15, we just cleared this out, but making sure that it is clear. First thing you're going to do, if you have not done so already, you're going to send that bolt forward, close your dust cover, take your magazine, insert it, give it a tap, give it a tug, and then this is what's known as the unchambered or the cruiser ready condition. Now, what is this condition good for? Basically, what this condition is good for is for things like truck guns where you do not have positive control of your weapon and there is a possibility of it being jarred or jostled in a way that could possibly set that weapon off. Firearms like ARs, AKs, shotguns, the majority of long guns have what are known as non-positive safeties. Basically what that means is that the safeties on those weapons only prevent the trigger from being pulled. They do not actually prevent the firing pin from going forward or from the hammer striking the firing pin. So with enough force and enough energy, the firing pin could either go forward and strike the primer of the round, or the hammer could disengage from the sear and strike the firing pin and strike a round. So that's the reason why cruiser ready or the unloaded condition are the best condition to keep your weapon in if you are having something like a truck gun. Now, for the purposes of, say, concealed carry, it's not a good idea to have an unloaded chamber. There's people out there that have this thought that they'll be able to draw their weapon, rack the slide, and get rounds off in time, which very rarely is the case. When you have a concealed weapon on you, I highly recommend keeping it at the loaded chamber condition. Basically what that means is once you have a weapon that is clear and safe, all you're going to do, take a magazine, insert it into your weapon, give it a tug, send your slide forward, and then you can either just holster up after that, or if you want to check and make sure that you do have a round chambered, because in a gunfight, there is no louder noise than a click when you need a bang. You can do what's known as a press check. A bunch of different ways to conduct a press check. The way that I tend to do it, I wrap my thumb over the front of my slide, grasping my slide serrations, and pull back just enough to where I can see around in my chamber. After that, I send my slide forward and kind of press on the back of my slide to make sure that my weapon goes back into battery. Now, the reason why I check to make sure that my slide is fully in battery after I do a press check is because if you bring the slide slightly out of battery to check and make sure that there's a round in your chamber, there's a possibility that it will stay slightly out of battery when you go to holster, and most handguns have a safety that prevents them from firing out of battery, meaning that when you draw that weapon out of the holster and you present it and you go to fire, odds are it's not going to go off. All right, and that's basically the meat and potatoes of firearm safety. Is there more that would go in depth with? Yes, but as an introductory kind of lesson of firearm safety, kind of get your feet wet, that's going to be the basics of it. And as long as you follow those 4 firearm safety rules, you understand how to clear your weapon, how to properly load your weapon, how to properly care for it, you're not going to have any issues. My main advice when it comes to firearm safety is if you don't know something, don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to consult your user manual. Don't be afraid to get on the forums or get on Reddit and ask questions, because it's far better to ask those questions than to have something like a negligent discharge and possibly hurt yourself or someone else. Firearms are awesome and so much fun when used responsibly. It's when they're used irresponsibly and negligently that issues occur and where the 2A community gets a black eye. And just like everything else in life, practice doesn't necessarily make perfect, but it does make improvement. So if you are still kind of getting used to your firearm or just firearms in general, I highly recommend buying yourself some dummy rounds. They come in all shapes, sizes, calibers. Get some dummy rounds, clear out your gun, and work those dummy rounds through your gun and just learn how to use it. Learn how to clear it, learn how to load it, learn how to take it apart, field strip it, clean it, all that type of good stuff. And if you take the time to practice with your firearm, I guarantee you're going to become more confident and it's going to become second nature to you. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. I know there was a few setbacks and all that kind of good stuff, but I'm glad that I finally kind of got it done, and I'm really looking forward to content that I'm working on in the future. The next basics of video that I'm thinking of is either going to be basics of marksmanship. We're going over the kind of basic ones, fundamentals of firearms marksmanship, or I was actually thinking maybe even doing a basics on body armor, just kind of going over different levels, different applications, even like different ways of setting up plate carrier for different jobs pretty much. If there's any subject on firearms that you want me to cover, go ahead and leave it in the comments section. And who knows, maybe at some point I'll be able to get to it. But like I said, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for being here. Thank you for all of your support. I'm really hoping to get more comfortable in front of the camera and be able to produce some really good content for y'all. I'm very excited about some of the ideas that I have for videos for the future. Hopefully, eventually, I'll be able to find a good range and get some nice range videos, or at least some good B-roll for some of these videos, other than just having, a camera in my apartment filming me while I kind of mime all this kind of stuff. But that's all pending future plans. Until then, I'm going to be kind of stuck here in the apartment doing what I can, and hopefully y'all enjoy it. And until the next video, catch you guys later.